Hello and welcome to this first look exploring session looking at the reign of King Edward the Third, as it hath been sundry times played about the city of London sometime in the early 1590s and written by some people. Who knows? We really don't care about attribution. It's by some people, probably more than one hand, but maybe not. Maybe it was all. Well, who knows? Who knows? We're not even going to speculate. We're not going there. So all that we have is that this is a history play. It's going to tell us about the reign of King Edward III, and we're going to find out more about it by reading it in the usual fashion that we do. To read this text today, we have in this room this wonderful selection of readers. So reading King Edward himself is...
Hello, I'm Sarah Blake. I'm an actor, writer and director living in Germany.
Reading Prince Edward, not to be confused by King Edward, a name that's quite similar.
Briony, actor in Lincolnshire.
This is a play which features many kings, so we also have a King David, and we will be read by...
Hello, my name's Elizabeth Amisu, and I'm based in Romford.
And also with King David, there's a Douglas. Reading Douglas today is...
Hi, I'm Alan Scott, based in Suffolk.
We're also joined by reading Warwick, Messenger, and Messenger number 2, who follow each other very, very quickly, is...
Hi, I'm Eric, and I am very confused about everything today. It's been a hectic day.
Excellent. We will endeavour to get you even more baffled by the end of the session. Reading Artois today is...
Hello, I'm Tamara, and I too had a moment of panic here because I didn't know what we were doing today.
Yes, this play has been a last-minute change. If you saw earlier in the week that I said we were going to do All for Money, we changed that round for reasons that we got ahead of ourselves in plays, and that totally threw the whole schedule for the week. Sometimes being too successful is actually more problematic than slowly dragging your feet through the repertoire. Reading today, the Countess of Salisbury is...
Hello, I'm Emma Kemp. I'm an actor and I'm in London.
Reading Audley today is...
Hello, I'm Lynn Freitas. I'm a college composition teacher. I live in the northwestern United States.
Reading Lorraine today is...
Hello, I'm Helen Good. I'm a historian and I'm in Yorkshire.
Reading Montague today is...
Hi, I'm Rachael Nicole, an actor in New Jersey.
And reading Lodowick today is...
Hi, I'm Steve Longstaffe, scholar of early modern drama based in the northwest of England.
And I'm your host, Robert Crighton, and I will be reading occasional stage directions, original or inferred. Without further ado, we're going to dive into Act 1, Scene 1, as it has been labelled, I think, since its original printing. So we enter with possible flourish. It's a king coming on, so of course there's going to be some kind of a flourish. You wouldn't bring a king on without one. But joining the King Edward is also Derby, Prince Edward, Audley, and Artois.
Robert of Artois, banished though thou be from France, thy native country, yet with us thou shalt retain as great a seigneury, for we create the Earl of Richmond here. And now go forwards with our pedigree. Who next succeeded Philip le Beau?
3 sons of his, which all successfully did sit upon their father's regal throne, yet died and left no issue of their loins.
But was my mother's sister unto those?
She was, my lord, and only Isabel was all the daughters that this Philip had, whom afterward your father took to wife. And from the fragrant garden of her womb, your gracious self, the flower of Europe's hope, derived is inheritor to France. But note the rancour of rebellious minds. When thus the lineage of Le Beau was out, the French obscured your mother's privilege, and though she were the next of blood, proclaimed John of the house of Valois now their king. The reason was, they say, the realm of France, replete with princes of great parentage, would not admit a governor to rule, except he be descended of the male. And that's the special ground of their contempt, wherewith they study to exclude your grace.
But they shall find that forged ground of theirs to be but dusty heaps of brittle sand.
Perhaps it will be thought a heinous thing that I, a Frenchman, should discover this, but heaven I call to record of my vows, it is not hate, nor any private wrong, but love unto my country and the right provokes my tongue, thus lavish in report. You are the lineal watchman of our peace, and John of Valois indirectly climbs. What then should subjects but embrace their king? Ah, wherein may our duty more be seen, than striving to rebate a tyrant's pride and place the true shepherd of our commonwealth.
This counsel, Artois, like to fruitful showers, hath added growth unto my dignity, and by the fiery vigour of thy words hot courage is engendered in my breast, which heretofore was rigged in ignorance, but now doth mount with golden wings of fame, and will approve fair Isabel's descent, able to yoke their stubborn necks with steel that spurn against my sovereignty in France.
There sounds a horn.
A messenger, Lord Audley, know from whence?
Enter a messenger from Lorraine.
The Duke of Lorraine, having crossed the seas, entreats he may have conference with your highness.
Admit him, lords, that we may hear the news.
And we can infer that enter Lorraine around here.
Say, Duke of Lorraine, wherefore art thou come?
The most renowned prince, King John of France, doth greet thee, Edward, and by me commands that for so much as by his liberal gift the Guienne dukedom is entailed to thee, thou do him lowly homage for the same. And for that purpose here I summon thee, repair to France within these 40 days, and there, according as the custom is, thou mayst be sworn true liegeman to our king. Or else thy title in that province dies, and he himself will repossess the place.
See how occasion laughs me in the face. No sooner minded to prepare for France, but straight I am invited, nay, with threats upon a penalty, enjoined to come. 'Twere but a childish part to say him nay. Lorraine, return this answer to thy lord. I mean to visit him as he requests. But how? Not servilely disposed to bend, but like a conqueror, to make him bow. His lame, unpolished shifts are come to light, and truth hath pulled the vizard from his face that sets a gloss upon his arrogance. Dare he command a fealty in me? Tell him the crown that he usurps is mine, and where he sets his foot he ought to kneel. 'Tis not a petty dukedom that I claim, but all the whole dominions of the realm, which, if with grudging he refuse to yield, I'll take away those borrowed plumes of his, and send him naked to the wilderness.
Then, Edward, hear, in spite of all thy lords, I do pronounce defiance to thy face.
Defiance, Frenchman? We rebound it back, even to the bottom of thy master's throat. And be it spoke with reverence of the king, my gracious father and these other lords, I hold thy message but as scurrilous, and him that sent thee, like the lazy drone, crept up by stealth unto the eagle's nest, from whence we'll shake him with so rough a storm as others shall be warned by his harm.
Bid him leave of the lion's case he wears, lest meeting with the lion in the field he chance to tear him with piecemeal for his pride.
The soundest counsel I can give his grace is to surrender ere he be constrained. A voluntary mischief hath less scorn than when reproach with violence is borne.
Degenerate traitor, viper to the place where thou wast fostered in thine infancy. Bearest thou a part in this conspiracy?
And he draws his sword.
Lorraine, behold the sharpness of this steel!
And Edward draws his as well, we can infer.
Fervent desire that sits against my heart is far more thorny pricking than this blade. That, with the nightingale, I shall be scared, as, oft as I dispose myself to rest, until my colours be displayed in France. This is my final answer, so be gone.
It is not that, nor any English brave afflicts me so, as doth his poisoned view, that is most false, should most of all be true.
And exit Lorraine.
Now, Lord, our fleeting bark is under sail, our gage is thrown, and war is soon begun, but not so quickly brought unto an end.
Enter Montague.
But wherefore comes Sir William Montague? How stands the league between the Scot and us?
Cracked and dissevered, my renowned lord, the treacherous king no sooner was informed of your withdrawing of your army back, but straight, forgetting of his former oath, he made invasion on the bordering towns. Warwick is won, Newcastle spoiled and lost, and now the tyrant hath begirt with siege the castle of Roxborough, where enclosed the Countess Salisbury is like to perish.
That is thy daughter, Warwick, is it not? Whose husband hath in Britain served so long about the planting of Lord Mountford there?
It is, my lord.
Ignoble David, hast thou none to grieve but silly ladies with thy threatening arms? But I will make you shrink your snaily horns. First, therefore, Audley, this shall be thy charge. Go levy footmen for our wars in France. And Ned, take muster of our men-at-arms. In every shire elect a several band. Let them be soldiers of a lusty spirit, such as dread nothing but dishonour's blot. Be wary, therefore, since we do commence a famous war, and with so mighty a nation. Derby, be thou ambassador for us unto our father-in-law, the Earl of Hainault. Make him acquainted with our enterprise, and likewise will him, with our own allies that are in Flanders, to solicit to the Emperor of Allemagne in our name. Myself, while you are jointly thus employed, will with these forces that I have at hand march, and once more repulse the traitorous Scot. But, sirs, be resolute. We shall have wars on every side. And Ned, thou must begin now to forget to an armour's weight.
As cheerful sounding to my youthful spleen this tumult is of war's increasing broils, as at the coronation of a king the joyful clamours of the people are, when Ave Caesar they pronounce aloud. Within this school of honour I shall learn either to sacrifice my foes to death, or in a rightful quarrel spend my breath. Then cheerfully forward each a several way, in great affairs 'tis naught to use delay.
And they exit. Poor Ned, he's got to forget this study in thy books. Yeah, you're thy soldiers to an armour's weight. You know, it's clearly a young lad who's now a man, going forth into this war business. Traitorous Scots. I'm half Scottish, so this bit is sort of an interesting conflict in myself. Going to fight with France, at which point the French very sensibly try and get the Scots to attack. It's an excellent defensive strategy that the French employed frequently. We've got all various different directions. I do pronounce defiance to thine face. I like that as a turn of phrase.
It should be accompanied with a glove slap, though. I feel, you know.
No, I think a piece of asparagus dipped in butter, and that's a reference that very few people will get. That's fine. That was deeply niche. Yeah, thoughts about this this opening? We've got all sorts of different people popping in and out with news, messengers, people giving stuff that's going on, threats of war, give us good reasons why we should go to war, etc. Helen,
I like it. It avoids 2 or 3 characters telling the audience the plot by telling each other what they already know. It's got some movement in it, some new information arriving, and you don't feel that people are rehashing the situation so far for the benefit of the audience.
And about every 50 lines or so, someone comes in and slightly changes the status quo. So it's quite nice.
Yeah.
There's a sense of movement to it, while it's establishing some sense of what the world is and also how unstable their world is. We don't have to comment too deeply. We've only done one scene. We haven't even had a prologue to get warmed up with. There probably was some sort of a prologue. It hasn't survived. Briony.
I want to say it out loud because it's probably going to haunt my dreams. One of the worst turns of phrases I've ever heard in my life. The fragrant garden of her womb.
And yes, it seems oddly familiar. I do wonder whether we've heard something similar before. It feels like one of those disturbing commonplaces that we will ignore, and move on.
Yes.
Other thoughts? Okay, let's gather some more data then. We've set the scene. We've met the king. We've met the king's son. We can expect great things from Prince Edward, I'm sure. And those dastardly Scots. Yeah. Anyway, we're going to join people on the front line perhaps for this issue, because enter in Act 1, Scene 2, or what is labelled as such. Enter the Countess.
Alas, how much in vain my poor eyes gaze for succour that my sovereign should send. Oh, cousin Montague, I fear thou want'st the lively spirit, sharply to solicit with vehement suit the king in my behalf. Thou dost not tell him what a grief it is to be the scornful captive of a Scot, either to be wooed with broad untuned oaths, or forced by rough insulting barbarism. Thou dost not tell him, if he here prevail, how much they will deride us in the north, and in their wild, uncivil, skipping gigs, brave forth their conquest and our overthrow, even in the barren, bleak, and fruitless air.
Enter King David and Douglas and Lorraine.
I must withdraw. The everlasting foe comes to the wall. I'll closely step aside and list their babble, blunt and full of pride.
My lord of Lorraine, to our brother of France, commend us, as the man in Christendom, that we most reverence and entirely love. Touching your embassage, return and say that we with England will not enter parley, nor never make fair weather, or take truce, but burn their neighbour towns, and so persist with eager rods beyond their city York. And never shall our bonny riders rest, nor rusting canker have the time to eat, their light-born snaffles, nor their nimble spurs, nor lay aside their jacks of gimmeled mail, nor hang their staves of grain Scottish ash, in peaceful wise upon their city walls, nor from their button-tawny leathern belts dismiss their biting whinyards, till your king cry out, enough, spare England now for pity. Farewell, and tell him that you leave us here before this castle. Say you came from us even when we had that yielded to our hands.
I take my leave, and fairly will return your acceptable greeting to my king.
Exit Lorraine.
Now, Douglas, to our former task again, for the division of this certain spoil.
My liege, I crave the lady and no more.
Nay, soft ye, sir. First I must make my choice, and first I do bespeak her for myself.
Why then, my liege, let me enjoy her jewels.
Those are her own, still liable to her, and who inherits her hath those withal.
Enter a Scot, a messenger in haste.
My liege, as we were pricking on the hills to fetch in booty, marching hitherward, we might descry a might host of men. The sun, reflecting on the armour, should field of plate, a wood of picks advanced. Bethink your highness speedily herein, as an easy march within 4 hours will bring the hindmost rank unto this place, my liege.
Dislodge! Dislodge! It is the King of England.
Jemmy, my man, saddle my bonny black.
Meanst thou to fight, Douglas? We are too weak.
I know it well, my liege, and therefore fly.
My lords of Scotland, will ye stay and drink?
She mocks at us, Douglas. I cannot endure it.
Say, good my lord, which is he must have the lady, and which her jewels? I'm sure, my lords, you will not hence, till you have shared the spoils.
She heard the messenger and heard our talk, and now that comfort makes her scorn at us.
And enter another messenger who is completely different from the previous messenger.
Arm, my good lord. Oh, we are all surprised.
After the French ambassador, my liege, and tell him that you dare not ride to York. Excuse it that your bonny horse is lame.
She heard that too. Intolerable grief. Woman, farewell. Although I do not stay.
Exeunt the Scots.
'Tis not for fear, and yet you run away. Oh, happy comfort. Welcome to our house. The confident and boisterous boasting Scot that swore before my walls they would not back for all the armed power of this land, with faceless fear that ever turns his back, turned hence against the blasting northeast wind, upon the bare report and name of arms.
And I'm going to pause there before Montague enters, just sort of midway through this scene, just to pick up on a few elements here. The depiction of the Scots here. There's some interesting material, some of which I'm deeply conflicted about, and some of which I have to find. When Douglas says, "Jimmy, my man, saddle my bonny black," I have to say that does raise a little smile in the corner of my mouth, regardless of some of the really, really anti-Scottish invective that is quite aggressively thrown out there. And the way the scene unfolds. Any thoughts on this scene, Alan? Then Elizabeth.
I mean, the first scene looked as if it was set in the English court. This would appear to be a completely separate location, but unspecified. And yet Lorraine has travelled from one to t'other. I do find it rather confusing when we get plays like this that don't actually give an idea of what the locus is of scenes.
Yes, well, they talked in the end of the previous scene about rebelling Scots and the problem with the Countess of Salisbury, and we now have some rebelling Scots. So I'm assuming we're there. I say invading Scots, I think, is a more important point, actually. I'll go to Elizabeth in a moment. Helen, if you're going to address the point.
I mean, we seem to be in some northern castle or other where the Countess has been temporarily incommoded by invading Scots. And I must say, I like the Countess. She has the right attitude.
We can probably assume that this is indeed the castle of Roxburgh, where the enclosed the Countess of Salisbury is like to perish, as stated in the previous scene.
Yes, except that I thought Roxburgh was in Scotland.
Who knows? Maybe they picked her up and carried her there. Maybe there's more data coming on. Elizabeth, sorry to finally get around to you.
I think I like Countess too. I love her hearing. I love her amazing hearing. Oh, she heard that too. I love those jokes about the Countess hearing everything that they said in private. But I was also wondering, Rob, about if we have a year for this play, because I was thinking it must not be a Stuart era play. It has to be before then.
Yeah, it's printed in 1596. The general outline for when it is somewhere between 1590 1594. So early 1590s.
Okay.
So late Elizabeth, as it were.
Late Elizabeth.
Or late-ish. It's later than you think, but not still reasonably early. Lynn.
But still, by the 1590s, it was kind of an open secret that James VI of Scotland was going to be King of England, wasn't it? Helen, what you want to weigh in?
Yeah, go Helen.
Yes and no. It seems obvious to us now. It was by no means obvious in 1596. And in fact, the town of Northampton proclaimed Lady Jane Grey's nephew.
Oh, good Lord.
And then very, very carefully erased it from the books, but we have a letter. I mean, no, it was by no means a done deal. Certainly not in 96.
And this, so that's the latest date because that's when it was printed. So this is even earlier than that.
No.
So yeah, it's not a done deal. It might be a possibility, but that doesn't mean who knows where we're going to be in 5-10 years time. Anyone want to make any predictions?
Who would have expected we would be here now?
Yeah. So we're still mid-scene. Any additional thoughts before we carry on? Yeah, I wonder. It's an interesting question in performance, actually. The question of how good the Countess's hearing is. Is it that her hearing is great, or the King David and Douglas just speak really loudly and just are not aware that they speak really loudly, so that when they go, "She heard us," basically they're Brian Blessed. Tamara.
I do kind of like that idea, though, because just muted myself again, and that was the cat.
Yes,
he's
it was.
fine. He just chucked something. I do like that idea a little bit because it kind of plays into this idea of the men are talking, and nobody notices that the woman is listening in. Which might not work for this scene or for the Countess, but I just quite like that idea.
Certainly something that can be played with in rehearsal. Let's give ourselves future options, or other people future options. Anyway, the Countess has been left, and is generally reasonably happy. But at this point, enter Montague, and the Countess continues with an additional line of dialogue.
Oh, summer's day, see where my cousin comes.
How fares my aunt? We are not Scots. Why do you shut your gates against your friends?
Well may I give a welcome, cousin, to thee, for thou comest well to chase my foes from hence.
The king himself is come in person hither. Dear aunt, descend, and gratulate his highness.
How may I entertain his majesty to show my duty and his dignity?
And as King Edward enters, along with Warwick, Artois, and others, we can state more firmly that the Countess is in some sort of upper space, presumably to denote that she's within a castle and above, and therefore the question of how much she overhears and how good her hearing is a much more pointed thing because she's far away. Anyway, enter King Edward.
What? Are the stealing foxes fled and gone before we could uncouple at their heels?
They are, my liege, but with a cheerful cry, hot hounds and hardy chase them at the heels.
This is the Countess, Warwick, is it not?
Even she, my liege, whose beauty tyrants fear, as a May blossom with pernicious winds, hath sullied, withered, overcast, and done.
Had she been fairer, Warwick, than she is?
My gracious king, fair is she not at all, if that herself were by to stain herself, as I have seen her when she was herself.
What strange enchantment lurked in those her eyes, when they excelled this excellence they have, that now her dim decline hath power to draw my subject eyes from pursing majesty, to gaze on her with doting admiration.
In duty lower than the ground I kneel, and for my dull knees bow my feeling heart, to witness my obedience to your highness, with many millions of a subject's thanks for this your royal presence, whose approach hath driven war and danger from my gate.
Lady, stand up. I come to bring thee peace, however thereby I have purchased war.
No war to you, my liege. The Scots are gone, and gallop home towards Scotland with their hate.
Lest yielding here I pine in shameful love, come, we'll pursue the Scots. Artois, away.
A little while, my gracious sovereign, stay, and let the power of a mighty king honour our roof. My husband in the wars, when he shall hear it, will triumph for joy. Then, dear my liege, now niggard not thy state, being at the war, enter our homely gate.
Pardon me, Countess, I will come no near. I dream tonight of treason, and I fear.
Far from this place let ugly treason lie.
No farther off unheard conspiring eye, which shoots infected poison in my heart beyond repulse of wit or cure of art. Now in the sun alone it doth not lie, with light to take light from a mortal eye. For here 2 day stars that mine eyes would see more than the sun steals mine own light from me. Contemplative desire to be in contemplation, that may master thee. No, Warwick, Artois, to horse, and let's away.
What might I speak to make my sovereign stay?
What needs a tongue to speak such a speaking eye, that more persuades than winning oratory?
Let not thy presence, like the April sun, flatter our earth and suddenly be done. More happy do not make our outward wall, than thou wilt grace our inner house withal. Our house, my liege, is like a country swain, whose habit rude and manners blunt and plain, presageth not, yet inly beautified, with bounties, riches, and fair hidden pride. For where the golden ore doth buried lie, the ground, undecked with nature's tapestry, seems barren, sere, unfertile, fruitless, dry. And where the upper turf of earth doth boast his pied perfumes and party-coloured coat, delve there, and find this issue and their pride to spring from odour and corruption's side. But to make up my all too long compare, these ragged walls no testimony are what is within, but, like a cloak, doth hide from weather's waste the under-garnished pride. More gracious then my terms can let thee be. Entreat thyself to stay a while with me.
As wise as fair. What fond fit can be heard when wisdom keeps the gate as beauty's guard? It shall attend, while I attend on thee. Come on, my lords, here will I host tonight.
And exit. Yes, we've been here before in other plays where kings suddenly get a little bit horny. Though so far he's keeping it inside his pants at least, and yes. So yeah, it's he has to be persuaded to stay. Really has to talk him round. His better judgment saying we should probably pop off, as it were. Thoughts from the room. Helen.
I'm not getting any sense that she is offering to take him hospitality out of any wrong motive. I mean, I think that she seems to be completely oblivious of the fact that she's tempting him.
Yes, it seems like a perfectly, you've just come and saved our bacon from being surrounded by our enemies. Thank you very much. Come in, have a toasted muffin. It seems on her part all perfectly innocent. Sarah.
Yeah, I agree, and in terms of how much was she hearing, I think those other two, the Scots, they must have definitely had loud voices, because it doesn't give the impression that she hears any of this. One of my speeches was marked as an aside. I don't know if that's from the original text or not, but it seemed to me that quite a lot of that was actually an aside.
I've got various notes as we went along. There's a lot more asides in there. But she's not hearing that. She's not hearing almost any of that. There's whole speeches that go by, and then all that anyone actually hears is Warwick, Artois, let's go. And I think almost the rest of that speech was not heard. Other thoughts. We've got, this place so far has set up various irons in the fire. We've got potential wars in France. We've got ructions to the north of England with Scotland. We've got a potential love issue thing going on here. It's and that's just two scenes so far. Other thoughts? No, we're all good. It's a Wednesday, isn't it? It's just that's what happens on a Wednesday. Okay, we're going now to go to Act 2, or what's been labelled as Act 2, Scene 1, which technically is the last scene of the session. Technically, we might get beyond this, but Act 2, Scene 1 is also very long. So don't worry, it's not a mistake. So we may stop as we go along during the scene a few times. As it's been labelled later on, Act 2, Scene 1, and we have Enter Lodowick.
I might perceive his eye in her eye, lost, his ear to drink her sweet tongue's utterance, and changing passion, like inconstant clouds that rack upon the carriage of the winds, increase and die in his disturbed cheeks. Lo, when she blushed, even then did he look pale, as if her cheeks by some enchanted power attracted had the cherry blood from his. Anon, with reverent fear, when she grew pale, his cheeks put on their scarlet ornaments, but no more like her oriental red than brick to coral, or live things to dead. Why did he then thus counterfeit her looks? If she did blush, 'twas tender modest shame, being in the sacred presence of a king. If he did blush, 'twas red immodest shame, to veil his eyes amiss, being a king. If she looked pale, 'twas silly woman's fear, to bear herself in presence of a king. If he looked pale, it was with guilty fear, to dote amiss, being a mighty king. Then, Scottish wars, farewell. I fear 'twill prove a lingering English siege of peevish love. Here comes his highness, walking all alone.
Indeed, enter King Edward.
She is grown more fairer far since I came hither. Her voice more silver every word than other, her wit more fluent. What a strange discourse unfolded she of David and his Scots. Even thus, quoth she, he spake, and then spoke broad with epithets and accents of the Scot, but somewhat better than the Scot could speak. And thus, quoth she, and answered then herself, for who could speak like her? But she herself breathes from the wall an angel's note from heaven of sweet defiance to her barbarous foes. When she would talk of peace, methinks, her tongue commanded war to prison. When of war, it wakened Caesar from his Roman grave to hear war beautified by her discourse. Wisdom is foolishness, but in her tongue. Beauty a slander, but in her fair face. There is no summer but in her cheerful looks, nor frosty winter but in her disdain. I cannot blame the Scots that did besiege her, for she is all the treasure of our land. But call them cowards that they ran away, having so rich and fair a cause to stay. Art thou there, Lodowick? Give me ink and paper,
I will, my liege.
and bid the lords hold on their play at chess, for we will walk and meditate alone.
I will, my sovereign.
And exit Lodowick.
This fellow is well read in poetry, and hath a lusty and persuasive spirit. I will acquaint him with my passion, which he shall shadow with a veil of lawn, through which the Queen of Beauty's queen shall see herself the ground of my infirmity.
And enter Lodowick.
Hast thou pen, ink, and paper ready, Lodowick?
Ready, my liege?
Then, in the summer arbour, sit by me. Make it our council house or cabinet, since green our thoughts, green be the conventicle where we will ease us by disburdening them. Now, Lodowick, invocate some golden muse to bring thee hither an enchanted pen, that may for sighs set down true sighs indeed. Talking of grief, to make thee ready groan, and when thou writest of tears, encouch the word before and after with such sweet laments, that it may raise drops in a Tartar's eye, and make a flint heart Scythian pitiful. For so much moving hath a poet's pen. Then, if thou be a poet, move thou so, and be enriched by thy sovereign's love. For if the touch of sweet concordant strings could force attendance in the ears of hell, how much more shall the strains of poet's wit beguile and ravish soft and humane minds?
To whom, my lord, shall I direct my style?
To one that shames the fair and sots the wise, whose bod is an abstract or a brief, contains each general virtue in the world. Better than beautiful thou must begin. Devise for fair a fairer word than fair, and every ornament that thou wouldst praise, fly it a pitch above the soar of praise. For flattery fear thou not to be convicted, for were thy admiration 10 times more, 10 times 10,000 more, the worth exceeds of that thou art to praise. Thy praise is worth. Begin, I will to contemplate the while. Forget not to set down how passionate, how heartsick, how full of languishment her beauty makes me.
Write I to a woman?
What beauty else could triumph over me? Or who but women do our love lays greet? What? Thinkest thou I did bid thee praise a horse?
Of what condition or estate she is? 'Twere requisite that I should know, my lord.
Of such estate, that hers is as a throne, and my estate the footstool where she treads. Then mayst thou judge what her condition is by the proportion of her mightiness. Write on, while I peruse her in my thoughts. Her voice, to music or the nightingale. To music every summer-leaping swain compares his sunburnt lover when she speaks. And why should I speak of the nightingale? The nightingale sings of adulterate wrong, and that, compared, is too satirical. For sin, though sin, would not be so esteemed, but rather virtue sin, sin virtue deemed. Her hair, far softer than the silkworm's twist, like to a flattering glass, doth make more fair the yellow amber. Like a flattering glass comes in too soon. For writing of her eyes, I'll say that, like a glass, they catch the sun, and thence the hot reflection doth rebound against the breast, and burns my heart within. Ah! What a world of descant makes my soul upon this voluntary ground of love! Come, Lodowick, hast thou turned thy ink to gold? If not, write but in letters capital my mistress' name, and it will gild thy paper. Read, lord, read. Fill thou the empty hollows of mine ears with the sweet hearing of thy poetry.
I have not to a period brought her praise.
Her praise is as my love, both infinite, which apprehend such violent extremes that they disdain an ending period. Her beauty hath no match but my affection. Hers more than most, mine most, and more than more. Hers more to praise than tell the sea by drops, nay, more than drop, the massy earth by sands, and sand by sand print them in memory. Then wherefore talkest thou of a period to that which craves unended admiration? Read, let us hear.
More fair and chaste than is the Queen of Shades.
That line hath two faults, gross and palpable. Comparest thou her to the pale Queen of Night, who, being set in dark, seems therefore light? What is she, when the sun lifts up his head, but like a fading taper, dim and dead? My love shall brave the eye of heaven at noon, and, being unmasked, outshine the golden sun.
What is the other fault, my lord?
Read over the line again.
More fair and chaste.
I did not bid thee talk of chastity, to ransack so the treasure of her mind. For I had rather have her chaste than chaste. Out with the moonline, I will none of it. And let me have her likened to the sun. Say she has thrice more splendour than the sun, that her perfections emulate the sun, that she breeds sweets as plenteous as the sun, that she doth thaw cold winter like the sun, that she doth cheer fresh summer like the sun, that she doth dazzle gazers like the sun, and, in this application to the sun, bid her be free and general as the sun, who smiles upon the basest weed that grows as lovingly as on the fragrant rose. Let's see. What follows that same moonlight line?
More fair and chaste than is the Queen of Shades, more bold in constance.
In Constance? Then who?
Than Judith was.
Oh, monstrous lie. Put in the next a sword, and I shall woo her to cut off my head. Blot, blot, good Lodowick. Let us hear the next.
That's all that yet is done.
I thank thee, then. Thou hast done little ill, but what is done is passing ill. No, let the captain talk of boisterous war, the prisoner of immured dark constraint. The sick man best sets down the pangs of death, the man that starves the sweetness of a feast, the frozen soul the benefits of fire, and every grief of his happy opposite. Love cannot sound well but in lovers' tongues. Give me the pen and paper. I will write.
Enter the Countess.
But soft. Here comes the treasurer of my spirit. Lodowick, thou knowst not how to draw a battle. These wings, these flankers, and these squadrons argue in thee defective discipline. Thou shouldst have placed this here, this other here.
Pardon my boldness, my thrice gracious lords. Let my intrusion here be called my duty, that comes to see my sovereign how he fares.
Go, draw the same. I'll tell thee in what form.
I go.
And exit Lodowick, and there we will pause before we get to the Countess and King Edward actually having a conversation. So, yes, we're midway through this scene. Thoughts from the room, Lynn? Have many thoughts. Hands flying up all over the place.
Yes, at the beginning of this scene, I thought to myself, what is the point of having Lodowick observe that the king's big crush on the Countess is obvious to any reasonably astute observer? Why is that important? What is that in there for? But then as the scene progresses, it does sort of interestingly complicate that write a letter for me scene, because Lodowick knows who it's to. He knows what the point is. And so he deliberately puts in that, oh, you're so chaste. So he's sort of deliberately undermining the king's purpose and maybe trying to say, dude, king, bad idea. But the king, of course, is not getting it. So, I mean, just sort of the layers of sort of irony and people not knowing what, yeah, really interesting. I really kind of like that setup.
And also by having Lodowick coming on to make an opening speech, you can break up the fact that King Edward has only just this second exited, so he doesn't get much of an in-breath, does King Edward. But yes, it also serves internal structural purpose. It's not pointless. I saw lots of hands. I'll go to Stephen, and other people will need to wave again so that I know what's going on.
I really like Lynn's point, and it's far more sensible than mine. But this reminds me so much of going through students' creative writing drafts. There's kind of, do you know what I mean? I think Lynn's point is actually a much more sensible way to play it. But I couldn't help that, sort of sat there in a room at 5:30 and you want to go home for tea. And the student is going, okay, so I want to compare them to the sun, right? Because the sunlight melts the ice and the sun gives light. And I'm going, oh, really? Yeah. That's a great idea. So there is a possibility of a sort of shifting in and out of that, I suppose, in performance, depending on how serious you want to make that and how much you might want to maybe lighten the tone a little bit. You could play Lodowick as a sort of, old school sort of Edward II style, effeminate kings, not on my watch, matey. But you could mix it a little bit. But it took me back to the old days. I won't say what kind of days they were sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, yes. Do we feel that this King Edward is reminding us of the young Prince King from Edward II, who gets rid of Mortimer et al. It's quite a different. He's got married, had a son. Quite a long time's passed since we've last met this character in a totally different play. So Rachael, I've seen lots of hands. I'll need to go to others in a moment.
No, I think there is a lot of comedy here because there is that part where he's like, Lodowick is like, am I writing this to a woman? And he's like, no, to a woman. And I mean, what do you think, to a horse? And it's kind of like one of those like, I don't know, ultra masculine, like heterosexual pushing that on, I don't know how to explain it, like moments, like 6 feet in a hot tub type vine things. I don't know if I'm making sense. Anyway, what was it I was really gonna say? Oh, just this kind of reminds me of the Odyssey with Penelope. Just all these dudes come in her house while her husband's not there and hitting on her. Yeah.
Yes, we have stories of people hitting on the absent husbands, going all the way back to Dame Cyrith and earlier. So it's a well-worn trope by this point. It's interesting. I wonder if it's just simply Lodowick hasn't really figured out what he's when his lord says get pen and paper, he's expecting to write a memorandum to to sort out something in the war, and he's being asked to write this, and he doesn't know how to do it. This is not what I do every day. This is these are not the droids you're looking for. Eric, I think I saw earlier. Then Helen.
I was gonna say this is usually like a comedy scene in other plays where you get like this sort of reading back of the letter, and it's always like really, really not what the person said, or maybe even it is, but with a different like tone, as in like with the punctuation different, or something like that, which is always fun. But it doesn't seem like it's doing that here. It's kind of just using the awkwardness of the situation rather than using the comedy part of like repeating the letter back only.
Yeah, we've had other plays where we've got a letter where we find out what the letter is, and the letter is written down wrong, so it means totally different things, or the punctuation is different and changes meaning. Here, the letter is functioning more like an offstage character you never meet, who gets grossly exaggerated in description. So in this case, it's the details of what's wrong in the letter are only ever sketchily put in, but you put that in the wrong order, and things. Helen, muted at the moment.
For a characterization point, King Edward at the beginning says, whether he's accurate or not, who knows? This fellow is well read in poetry and hath a lusty and persuasive spirit. So, he's not just a random scribe, I think. When the Countess appears, Edward changes the whole scenario for the benefit of the incoming Countess. And Lodowick has to keep up with this, because suddenly all this paperwork is not poetry, it's a plan of the battle that they're going to fight against the Scots.
Yeah.
And Lodowick has to, if he was under any doubt about what was going on, he no longer is.
Yeah, well, or more importantly, he's just given up, and just all he says left in the scene is, "I go." So it might just be going, okay, something's going on, but I don't know what it is. I'm just going to get out of Dodge and send somebody else back. I'm on. I'll send the night shift in to see what they make of this.
Yeah, but he's being sent to. King Edward says, "Go draw the same," meaning to the Countess to go draw up the plan of the battle. But in fact, to Lodowick to write the letter as discussed. But yeah.
Anyway, very briefly, Rachael, before we continue the scene, because we're only halfway through this long scene.
No, I was just going to say, I wonder if it's like a trope, because we had Solomon last week saying, how attracted he was to Perseda. And then, after that, he just decided to throw out that, acting the way a king, I guess, should, and just going after her. And then you kind of have King Edward here doing the same thing, talking about her eyes, but you know what, I'll behave myself, and then, being like, taking that back almost immediately. So,
well,
yeah.
We shall see. We shall see where King Edward goes with this. Will he be a good king or not? Let us find out. The Countess has entered. Lodowick has gone. Countess continues talking to King Edward.
Here I am to see my liege so sad. What may thy subject do to drive from thee thy gloomy consort, solemn melancholy?
Ah, lady, I am blunt and cannot straw the flowers of solace in a ground of shame. Since I came hither, Countess, I am wronged.
Now God forbid that any in my house should think my sovereign wrong. Thrice gentle king, acquaint me with your cause of discontent.
How near, then, shall I be to remedy?
As near, my liege, as all my woman's power can pawn itself to buy thy remedy.
If thou speakst true, then have I my redress. Engage thy power to redeem my joys, and I am joyful, Countess. Else I die.
I will, my liege.
Swear, Countess, that thou wilt?
By heaven, I will.
Then take thyself a little way aside, and tell thyself a king doth dote on thee. Say that within my power it doth lie to make him happy, and that thou hast sworn to give him all the joy within thy power. Do this, and tell me when I shall be happy.
All this is done, my thrice dread sovereign. That power of love that I have power to give, Thou hast with all devout obedience, employ me how thou wilt in proof thereof.
Thou heardst me say that I do dote on thee.
If on my beauty, take it, if thou canst, though little I do prize it 10 times less. If on my virtue, take it, if thou canst, for virtue's store by giving doth augment. Be it on what it will that I can give, and thou canst take away, inherit it.
It is thy beauty that I would enjoy.
Oh, were it painted, I would wipe it off and dispossess myself to give it thee. But, sovereign, it is sold to my life. Take one and both, for like an humble shadow, it haunts the sunshine of my summer's life.
But thou mayst lend it me to sport withal.
As easy may my intellectual soul be lent away, and yet my body live, as lend my body, palace to my soul, away from her, and yet retain my soul. My body is her bower, her court, her abbey, and she an angel, pure, divine, unspotted. If I should leave her house, my lord, to thee, I kill my poor soul, and my poor soul me.
Didst thou not swear to give me what I would?
I did, my liege. So what you would I could.
I wish no more of thee than thou mayst give, nor beg I do not, but I rather buy, that is, thy love, and for that love of thine in rich exchange I tender to thee mine.
But that your lips were sacred, my lord, you would profane the holy name of love. That love you offer me, you cannot give, for Caesar owes that tribute to his queen. That love you beg of me, I cannot give, for Sarah owes that duty to her lord. He that doth clip or counterfeit your stamp shall die, my lord, and will your sacred self commit high treason against the King of heaven, to stamp his image in forbidden metal, forgetting your allegiance and your oath, in violating marriage. Sacred law, you break a greater honor than yourself. To be a king is of a younger house than to be married. Your progenitor, sole reigning Adam on the universe, by God was honored for a married man, but not by him anointed for a king. It is a penalty to break your statutes, though not enacted with your highness' hand. How much more to infringe the holy act, made by the mouth of God and sealed with his hand? I know, my sovereign, in my husband's love, who now doth loyal service in his wars, doth but so try the wife of Salisbury, whether she will hear a wanton's tale or no, lest being therein guilty by my stay, from that, not from my liege, I turn away.
And exit the Countess.
Whether is her beauty by her words dying, or are her words sweet chaplains to her beauty? Like as the wind doth beautify a sail, and as a sail becomes the unseen wind, so do her words, her beauty's words. Oh, that I were a honey-gathering bee, to bear the comb of virtue from this flower, and not a poison-sucking, envious spider to turn the juice I take to deadly venom. Religion is austere, and beauty gentle, too strict a guardian for so fair a ward. Oh, that she were as is the air to me. Why, so she is. But when I would embrace her, this I do, and catch nothing but myself. I must enjoy her, for I cannot beat with reason and reproof fond love away.
Enter Warwick.
Here comes her father. I will work with him to bear my colours in this field of love.
How is it that my sovereign is so sad? May I with pardon know your highness' grief, and that my old endeavour will remove it. It shall not encumber long your majesty.
A kind and voluntary gift thou profferest, that I were forward to have begged of thee. But, O thou world, great nurse of flattery, why dost thou tip men's tongues with golden words, and pays their deeds with weight of heavy lead, that fair performance cannot follow promise? Oh, that a man might hold the heart's close book, and choke the lavish tongue, when it doth utter the breath of falsehood, not charactered there.
Far be it from the honour of my eye that I should hoe bright gold and render lead. Age is a cynic, not a flatterer. I say again that if I knew your grief, and that by me it may be lessened, my proper harm should buy your highness good.
These are the vulgar tenders of false men, that never pay the duty of their words. Thou wilt not stick to swear what thou hast said, but when thou knowest my grief's condition, this rash disgorged vomit of thy word, thou wilt eat up again, and leave me helpless.
By heaven, I will not, though your majesty did bid me run upon your sword and die.
Say that my grief is no way medicinable, but by the loss and bruising of thine honour.
If nothing but that loss may vantage you, I would account that loss my vantage too.
Think'st that thou canst unswear thy oath again?
I cannot, nor would I not if I could.
But if thou dost, what shall I say to thee?
What may be said to any perjured villain that breaks the sacred warrant of an oath?
What wilt thou say to one that breaks an oath?
That he hath broke his faith with God and man, and from them both stands excommunicate.
What office were it to suggest a man to break a lawful and religious vow?
An office for the devil, not for the man.
That devil's office must thou do for me, or break thy oath, or cancel all the bonds of love and duty twixt thyself and me. And therefore, Warwick, if thou art thyself the lord and master of thy word and oath, go to thy daughter, and, in my behalf, command her, woo her, win her any ways to be my mistress and my secret love. I will not stand to hear thee make reply. Thy oath breaks hers, or let thy sovereign die.
Dun dun dun. Exit Edward, leaving Warwick to make a decision. We're still mid-scene. There's a little bit left to go. Yeah, thoughts from the room. This scene is twisting all around. I see lots of hands. I see lots of faces. I'll go to Lynn first, then Briony, then Eric.
I'm just going to say I am liking Edward less and less every scene. I mean, not only does he, lust after another man's wife, and he's also married, and she gives him the most gently couched and articulate reproof possible. Saying, it's not you, it's this terrible situation. I know you're only trying me. She gives him an out, and he's like, oh man, I want her even more now. And then he tries to make her father her pander and manipulate him, promise me you'll do it. And I don't like him.
Yeah, serious moves against Edward there, Briony.
I am also deeply unhappy with Daddy Edward right now. Not cool. So he's tried to trick first her and then her dad in exactly the same way as well, with this whole, you'd do anything to make me happy, wouldn't you? No, but promise me that you would do anything to make me happy. Okay, this is what I want. And it's disgusting. And yeah, and even Dad didn't go for it. So I'm pleased that Warwick had a little bit. Well, he hasn't yet, has he? No, we haven't had his answer yet. So yeah, oh God. Yeah, I dread to think.
Yes, I get the impression that there's a lot of people unfriending Edward III on Facebook at the moment. Eric.
I was going to say that it's just oh, so you promised me, yeah? And what would you do to someone who breaks that promise? And then it's but by the time you get to what he says about, the daughter and so on, it's no pressure, just kind of, no, it's not going to affect our relationship whatsoever, is it?
Yes, Stephen muted at the moment. I'm just going to mention to everyone that we will go on to the next scene after this, beyond what we were planning, because it actually concludes a unit of action that I think is sensible to do. Stephen.
Yeah, I mean, just to say that the oath is something that binds together this sort of ruling political class in a sense, and it's certainly recognizable as a live thing in Elizabeth's reign as well, I think. So he's not just the things that everybody has already identified, horrible though they are, but he's also striking at the kind of the glue of that monarchical, but with the barons along with you system. So this is a problem for the political nation as well, that he's blatantly abusing something which should be tying king and nobles together, and what he's doing is he's basically playing a kind of trick. So it's also very worrying from the point of view of what's going to happen politically, and perhaps that looks forward as well.
I like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Other thoughts about this? This scene? Oh, lots of hands flying up again. Emma, then Sarah.
I thought that was a really great scene between King Edward and the Countess. I think there's so many interesting choices there, particularly for the Countess. Maybe at what point does she realise what his intentions really are? Is she completely innocent the whole way through until he actually says it in so many words, or does she realise earlier and play it innocent in order to give herself some thinking time? And does she start to try and push him away before he's even kind of said explicitly what he wants to say? So there's some interesting choices there, and I really like that final speech she has talking about the rules of marriage and how sacred it is, because that must be such a tense situation, because she has her morals, but also it's a king, and you can't really say no to a king. You can, but it doesn't put you in a very good position. So the stakes in that speech are really, really high.
Yes, as we transition from recreational flirting to something with intent, there's the dynamics of that scene. And at what point do people realise what is real and what is something that is more formal? Sarah.
Yeah, just following on from that. As we're recording this, there's been a lot of quite distressing stuff in the news recently, and there's been a lot of stuff on social media about the hoops that women have to jump through in order to keep predatory men at bay. And the sort of, do you laugh it off? Do you try and be encouraging as a friend and make it clear that you want to be a friend and nothing more? Or do you just, run away or whatever? And, the fact that there's all this to negotiate. And I just found this scene, given the context of that background that's been all over social media for the last week or so, I just found it really, really powerful. It's a powerful scene anyway, but it is so translatable to, ongoing experience, a woman's experience. And there's one speech in particular, the speech where Edward says, "But thou may lend it me," i.e. her beauty, her physicality, to sport withal. And she says, "As easy may my intellectual soul be lent away, and yet my body live, as lend my body, palace to my soul, away from her, and yet retain my soul." And then she goes on to talk about her soul and body being, being the one being the house for the other. And I just thought that was a brilliant speech, and just so uncannily relevant to what's going on in society, to the dialogue that's going on in society at the moment. So yeah, brilliant writing, and a brilliant expression of the dilemma that countless women have had to go through the centuries, and here's one expressing it so succinctly and perfectly.
Rachael, briefly, then we'll move on.
No, this is what Sarah and Stephen were saying, that this has political implications, and what Sarah was saying about negotiation, she's negotiating both that space as a woman and as a noble, as in politics, and she's trying to be careful because he's a king and a man, and she sees it's like it's both these things. And then there's another interesting clue to the way that she's physically dressed in that scene, that, you know, she's saying, if I was wearing makeup, I would wipe it off and I'd give you that, but I'm not. So, you know, not to say that women who are wearing makeup are asking to be looked at by men, but I think the writing and the time that this is being written, that she's not wearing makeup, says a lot, that she has no interest in him at all. And she wasn't trying to pretty herself up for anybody.
Right, let's complete the scene. We left the scene, King Edward basically ordering Father Warwick to do a devil's office. Exit Edward, leaving Warwick to make a decision.
Oh, doting king, oh, detestable office. Well may I tempt myself to wrong myself when he hath sworn me by the name of God to break a vow made by the name of God. What if I swear by this the right hand of mine to cut this right hand off? The better way were to profane the idol than confound it, but neither will I do. I'll keep mine oath, and to my daughter make a recantation of all the virtue I have preached to her. I'll say, she must forget her husband Salisbury, if she remember to embrace the king. I'll say an oath may easily be broken, but not so easily pardoned being broken. I'll say it is true charity to love, but not true love to be so charitable. I'll say his greatness may bear out the shame, but not his kingdom can buy out the sin. I'll say it is my duty to persuade, but not her honesty to give consent.
And enter the Countess.
See where she comes. Was never father had against his child an embassage so bad?
My lord and father, I have sought for you. My mother and the peers importune you to keep in presence of his majesty, and do your best to make his highness merry.
How shall I enter in this graceless errand? I must not call her child, for where's the father that will in such suit seduce his child? Then wife of Salisbury, shall I so begin? No, he's my friend, and where is found the friend that will do such friendship such endangerment? Neither my daughter nor my dear friend's wife. I am not Warwick, as thou thinkst I am, but an attorney from the court of hell, that thus have housed my spirit in his form, to do a message to thee from the king. The mighty king of England dotes on thee. He that hath power to take away thy life, hath power to take away thy honour, and then consent to pawn thine honour rather than thy life. Honour is often lost and got again, but life, once gone, hath no recovery. The sun that withers hay doth nourish grass. The king that would disdain thee will advance thee. The poets write that great Achilles' spear could heal the wound it made. The moral is, what mighty men misdo, they can amend. The lion doth become his bloody jaws and grace his foragement by being mild when vassal fear lies trembling at his feet. The king will in his glory hide thy shame, and those that gaze on him to find out thee will lose their eyesight looking in the sun. What can one drop of poison harm the sea, whose huge vastures can digest the ill and make it loose his operation? The king's great name will temper thy misdeeds, and give the bitter potion of reproach a sugared, sweet, and most delicious taste. Besides, it is no harm to do the thing which without shame could not be left undone. Thus have I in his majesty's behalf apparelled sin in virtuous sentences, and dwell upon thy answer in his suit.
A natural besiege. Woe me, unhappy, to have escaped the danger of my foes, and to be 10 times worse injured by friends. Hath he no means to stain my honest blood, but to corrupt the author of my blood, to be his scandalous and vile solicitor? No marvel though the branches be then infected, when poison hath encompassed the root. No marvel though the leprous infant die, when the stern dame envenometh the dug. Why then, give sin a passport to offend, and youth the dangerous reign of liberty. Blot out the strict forbidding of the law, and cancel every canon that prescribes a shame for shame or penance for offence. No, let me die, if his too boisterous will have it so, before I will consent to be an actor in his graceless lust.
Why, now thou speak'st as I would have thee speak, and mark how I unsay my words again. An honourable grave is more esteemed than the polluted closet of a king. The greater man, the greater there is the thing, be it good or bad, that he shall undertake. An unreputed mote flying in the sun presents a greater substance than it is. The freshest summer's day doth soonest taint that beloathed carrion that it seems to kiss. Deep are the blows made with a mighty axe, that sin doth 10 times aggravate itself that is committed in a holy place. An evil deed done by authority is sin and subordination. Deck an ape in tissue, and the beauty of the robe adds but the greater scorn unto the beast. A spacious field of reasons could I urge between his glory, daughter, and thy shame. That poison chews worse than a golden cup. Dark night seems darker by the lightning flash. Lilies that fester smell far worse than weeds, and every glory that inclines to sin, the shame is treble by the opposite. So leave I with my blessing in thy bosom, which then convert to a most heavy curse, when thou convertest from honor's golden name to the black fraction of bed-blotting shame.
Follow thee, and when my mind turns so, my body sink my soul in endless woe.
And they exit. I'll open to the floor for a few comments before we go into the next scene to close Act 2 as it's laid out. Any thoughts from the room? Anyone wants to throw in? Lynn?
I was just thinking what a fun scene this would be for the actor playing Warwick. He basically says, okay, I'm going to fulfill the letter of my oath, but I have to try to do it in a way that my daughter says, fuck you, Dad. So that speech to her, oh, honor can be won again. So, I mean, there's just like that'd be such a fun scene to play where you're pretending to ask her to do this, but at the same time, your subtext has to be, tell me no, tell me no, tell me no. Such a fun scene to play.
Other thoughts? Any new thoughts from other people as well as? I'll go to Rachael. Anyone else want to leap in as well?
No, I think I think part of her defense against the, I mean, her castle's been sieged, and here she's under, siege by all the men that are coming through it and walking in and out and trying to walk all over her. And, the modesty that she's showing the king, I think belays that, this part that she's showing to her father, who she feels on equal footing to, that she really is this, she's not a soft-spoken woman. And she's not a weak person emotionally. And every scene, I think I'm loving this Countess more.
Any other thoughts before we go into Act 2, Scene 2? Briony, and then Eric.
Just to bolster what everyone else has said, and how great the Countess is, I just love that she literally would rather die.
Eric?
I was going to say that it's interesting how he kind of goes, so what am I going to say? Well, how am I going to greet her? I can't do this, I can't do that. And then he kind of, just that first bit of the neither my daughter nor my dear friend's wife, it just feels very, like he's very formal. Like he's talking to his daughter, but he actually he's adding so many layers of formality. It's like, even if they're like just the two of them on stage, it's very, very not intimate. And then the next bit, which is, my blessing goes in your bosom and all that stuff. It just sort of, it's much more, it's such a quick change though. I'm not an actor, so I probably didn't do it justice, but it's like, yeah, wow.
Well, it's that thing is he's trying to deliver the message by being as physically far away from the message he is delivering as possible. He is the attorney of the devil from the court of hell. So he does seem to be trying to distance himself successfully or unsuccessfully as the scene plays out. We're going to go into Act 2, Scene 2. Elizabeth is stepping in to read Darby. Otherwise, I think it matches all the other parts as already cast. So enter at one door Darby from France, at another Audley with a drum. You don't have to bring your own drum.
Thrice noble Audley, well encountered here. How is it with our sovereign and his peers?
'Tis a full fortnight since I saw his highness, what time he sent me forth to muster men, which I accordingly have done, and bring them hither in fair array before his majesty. What news, my lord of Derby, from the emperor?
As good as we desire. The emperor hath yielded to his highness friendly aid, and makes our king lieutenant general in all his lands and large dominions, then vie for the spacious bounds of France.
What doth his highness leap to hear these news?
I have not yet found time to open them. The king is in his closet, malcontent. For what, I know not, but he gave in charge, till after dinner none should interrupt him. The Countess Salisbury and her father Warwick, Artois, and all look underneath the brow.
Undoubtedly then something is amiss.
The trumpet sound! The king is now abroad.
Enter the king.
Here comes his highness.
Befall my sovereign all my sovereign's wish.
Ah, that thou wert a witch to make it so.
The emperor greeteth you,
Would it were the Countess.
and hath accorded to your highness sweet.
Thou liest, she hath not. I would she had.
All love and duty to my lord the king.
Oh, but one is none. What news with you?
I have, my liege, levied those horse and foot according to your charge, and brought them hither.
Then let those foot trudge hence upon those horse, according to our discharge, and be gone. Derby, I'll look upon the Countess' mind anon.
The countess mind, my liege.
I mean the Emperor. Leave me alone.
What is his mind?
Let's leave him to his humour.
Exit Derby and Audley.
Thus from the heart's abundance speaks the tongue. Countess for Emperor? Indeed, why not? She is as imperator over me, and I to her am as a kneeling vassal that observes the pleasure or displeasure of her eye.
Enter Lodowick.
What says the more than Cleopatra's match to Caesar now?
That yet, my liege, ere night she will resolve, your majesty.
Drum sounds.
What drum is this that thunders forth this march to start the tender Cupid in my bosom? Poor shipskin, how it brawls with him that beateth it. Go, break the thundering parchment bottom out, and I will teach it to conduct sweet lines into the bosom of a heavenly nymph, where I will use it as my writing paper, and so reduce him from a scolding drum to be the herald and dear counsel-bearer betwixt a goddess and a mighty king. Go, bid the drummer learn to touch the lute, or hang him in the braces of his drum, for now we think it an uncivil thing to trouble heaven with such harsh resounds. Away.
Exit Lodowick.
All that I have requires no arms but these of mine, and these shall meet my foe in a deep march of penetrable groans. My eyes shall be my arrows, and my sighs shall serve me as the vantage of the wind to whirl away my sweetest artillery. Ah, but alas, she wins the son of me, for that she is herself, and thence it comes that poets term the wanton warrior blind. But love hath eyes as judgment to his steps, till too much loved glory dazzles them.
And re-enter Lodowick.
Now?
My liege, the drum that struck the lusty march stands with Prince Edward, your thrice valiant son.
Who then enters. Enter Prince Edward. We can assume Lodowick exits.
I see the boy. Oh, how his mother's face, modelled in his, corrects my stray desire, and rates my heart, and chides my thievish eye, who, being rich enough in seeing her, yet seeks elsewhere. And basest theft is that which cannot cloak itself on poverty. Now, boy, what news?
I have assembled, my dear lord and father, the choicest buds of all our English blood for our affairs in France. and here we come to take direction from your majesty.
Still do I see in him delineate his mother's visage. Those his eyes are hers, who, looking wisely on me, make me blush for faults against themselves, give evidence. Lust is fire, and men like lanthorns show light lust within themselves, even through themselves. Away, loose silks of wavering vanity! Shall the large limit of fair Brittany by me be overthrown? And shall I not master this little mansion of myself? Give me an armour of eternal steel. I go to conquer kings, and shall I not then subdue myself, and be my enemy's friend? It must not be. Come, boy, forward, advance. Let's with our colours sweet the air of France.
Enter Lodowick.
My liege, the Countess with a smiling cheer desires access unto your majesty.
Why, there it goes. That very smile of hers hath ransomed captive France, and set the king, the dauphin, and the peers at liberty. Go, leave me, Ned, and revel with thy friends.
Exit Prince Edward.
Thy mother is but black, and thou, like her, dost put it in my mind how foul she is. Go, fetch the Countess hither in thy hand, and let her chase away these winter clouds, for she gives beauty both to heaven and earth.
And exit Lodowick.
The sin is more to hack and hew poor men than to embrace in an unlawful bed the register of all rarities, since leathern Adam till this youngest hour.
And enter the Countess, escorted by Lodowick.
Go, Lodowick. Put thy hand into my purse. Play, spend, give, riot, waste. Do what thou wilt. So thou wilt hence a while, and leave me here.
Exit Lodowick.
Oh, my soul's playfellow, art thou come to speak the more than heavenly word of yea to my objection in thy beauteous love?
My father on his blessing hath commanded
that thou shalt yield to me?
Aye, dear my liege, your due.
And that, my dearest love, can be no less than right for right and tender love for love.
Then wrong for wrong and endless hate for hate. But sith I see your majesty so bent that my unwillingness, my husband's love, your high estate, nor no respect respected can be my help, but that your mightiness will overbear and awe these dear regards, I bind my discontent to my content, and what I would not I'll compel I will, provided that yourself remove those lets that stand between your highness' love and mine.
Name them, fair Countess, and by heaven I will.
It is their lives that stand between our love, that I would have choked up, my sovereign.
Whose lives, my lady?
My thrice-loving liege, your queen, and Salisbury, my wedded husband, who living have that title in our love that we cannot bestow but by their death.
Thy opposition is beyond our law.
Who is your desire? If the law can hinder you to execute the one, let it forbid you to attempt the other. I cannot think you love me as you say, unless you do make good what you have sworn.
No more. Thy husband and the queen shall die. Fairer thou art by far than Hero was, beardless Leander not so strong as I. He sworn an easy current for his love, but I will through a Hellespont of blood to arrive at Cestus, where my hero lies.
Nay, you'll do more. You'll make the river too, with their hearts' bloods that keep our love asunder, of which my husband and your wife are twain.
Thy beauty makes them guilty of their death, and gives in evidence that they shall die. Upon which verdict I, their judge, condemn them.
Oh, perjured beauty, more corrupted judge, when to the great star chamber o'er our heads the universal sessions calls to count this packing evil, we both shall tremble for it.
What says my fair love? Is she resolute?
Resolute to be dissolute, and therefore this. Keep but thy word, great king, and I am thine. Stand where thou dost, I'll part a little from thee, and see how I will yield me to thy hands. Here, by my side, doth hang my wedding knives. Take thou the one, and with it kill thy queen, and learn by me to find her where she lies. And with this other, I'll dispatch my love, which now lies fast asleep within my heart. When they are gone, then I'll consent to love. Stir not, lascivious king, to hinder me. My resolution is more nimble afar than thy prevention can be in my rescue, and if thou stir, I strike. Therefore, stand still, and hear the choice that I will put thee to. Either swear to leave thy most unholy suit, and never henceforth to solicit me, or else by heaven, this sharp-pointed knife shall stain thy earth with that which thou wouldst stain, my poor chaste blood. Swear, Edward, swear, or I will strike and die before thee here.
Even by that power I swear, that gives me now the power to be ashamed of myself. I never mean to part my lips again in any words that tends to such a suit. Arise, true English lady, whom our isle may better boast of than ever Roman might of her, whose ransacked treasury hath tasked the vain endeavour of so many pens. Arise, and be my fault thy honour's fame, which after ages shall enrich thee with. I am awakened from this idle dream. Warwick, my son, Derby, Artois, and Audley, brave warriors all, where are you all this while?
And they all enter.
Warwick, I make thee warden of the north, thou, Prince of Wales, and Audley, straight to sea, scour to New Haven, some there stay for me. Myself, Artois, and Derby will through Flanders to greet our friends there, and to crave their aid. This night will scarce suffice a faithful lover, for, ere the sun shall gild the eastern sky, we'll wake him with our martial harmony.
And they exit. So, yeah. So recap of the play so far. We begin the play with war's coming. King goes off, becomes a total shit, and is sort of weirdly turned around. But don't worry, you can hear in the background, there's some war coming. And, oh no, ignores that, goes back to being a bit of a shit, goes to even more greater degrees of being a shit, and then, actually no, I'll stop now, I'll just do some war, because war's fine. So yeah, that's the story so far. Thoughts in the room, Briony?
I love the Countess at this point. So, like, at first, I kind of thought that he'd called her bluff, because I thought she was just straight up saying, you know, if you kill my husband and your wife, then I will get with you, and hoping that he would realise. And then he's like, yeah, totally, I'll do that, let's do it. And I was like, oh my God, no, it's backfired. And then I realised that it was like a double bluff, because she's like, by which I'll kill my husband, by which I mean I'll stab myself in the heart because I love him and I'm not going anywhere near you. Love it.
Tamara.
Yeah, I caught that really early on because I made a note of it and I was like, did she just, because she says something about her love which is inside her heart. So I was like, oh, she's doing that. And I'm trying to remember where I heard this from historically, but there's definitely this, can't remember which country it was, but there was this historical thing that women carried little knives around, and if somebody tried to rape them, they would threaten to kill themselves in order to get rid of the attacker. And I'm trying to remember who told me that and where it's from, but it's definitely something I heard. So yes, she's doing that thing of threatening to kill herself with the king. And yeah, I'm still trying to work out where I heard this before.
Stephen, then Rachael. You're muted at the moment.
what I like about the scene is that we've just had this big scene with her dad, who and that can be played sort of quite passively, can't it? Because the dad is going, haha, I had this plot, and I will almost sucker her into saying this, and then I will do my big reveal. And one way to play that is that she's kind of completely fooled, and the dad is in control. And here, this just comes straight from her, doesn't it? So, it's a really nice juxtaposition, I think. And that's one of the things that makes it so interesting for me, because of the way she was in the last time we saw her. She's clearly, got a plan stand by now. And she's, as it were, stopped getting mad and decided to get something else, hasn't she? But there's no kind of patriarch winding her up, which there was a bit of that in the previous scene. Do you know what I mean? In terms of relation to the paternal figure. So,
Rachael, then Sarah.
I mean, she did say in the last scene that she would rather die, and also that she said her saying that about her love or whatever, and it does say something about her love for her husband, how even if he was dead, she would still love him. I just also just the creepiness that all these guys were in earshot to be called, and that they could hear, possibly the conversation over these war drums going by. Just a creepy abuse of power. And also, how genres aren't as solid back then. I think there's some scenes before this where even though Edward's being creepy, it could be something that people would laugh at because it's lighter. And then when you come in to a scene like this, or, even scenes before, and it starts to get more serious, that you could have the audience being like, okay, I didn't really think it was going in this direction, and it might be something that they could think about, and this could be provocative to put in front of people to make them think.
Yeah, because when the king first sort of falls in love, and you have this scene with the letter writing, that's comedy. It's the whole thing's a comedic thing. Because maybe the story's going to go that she says, "Oh yes, absolutely, I will," and it's a love story. But then she doesn't do that, and it clearly doesn't go in that direction. It goes somewhere very different, and then it goes here, and it turns back. I'm just going to remind everyone, Edward III is with us for the duration as our putative hero. Just throwing in what this sequence is doing to us before we go off to France for war. Sarah, then Briony.
Yeah, just to kind of bring together something that Rachael said with something that Stephen said. This thing, I mean, the thing of like, I will kill myself rather than let this happen. I mean, that's a trope that we see. Where women either threaten to do that or do indeed actually do it, and she kind of takes that idea, and then she, following on from what Stephen was saying about the fact that she comes up with this herself and there's no patriarch winding her up in the background, not only does she take this on herself, but she marries it to basically the same scheme that, or the same kind of, nefarious little trick that Edward used against both her and her father in the previous scene. She gets him to swear to her, and then she kind of like lays out what she's going to do, lays out her intent. So yeah, not only is she acting with a fantastic degree of agency, but she's using a trope about virtuous women to kind of lay the trap, and then she's using his own trap back at him. So I'm just like, this is a very cool character, and this is actually a really cool plot development as well in terms of the characterization. I'm kind of not sure what it's gonna say about Edward's character in the long term of the play. But it is actually reminding me a lot of Edward IV, that we read, because you have the same kind of conflict between the king and his personal life with Jane Shaw. I mean, oh my God, the Countess is just such a great counterpoint to Jane Shaw, isn't she? I mean, come on, that's amazing.
And spoilers, we will never see the Countess again.
Oh!
That's the other thing, you know. This is now dropped. There is no more Countess. But we stay with Edward. Edward will return in Edward III next time. Briony.
I was just going to speak to the bit about whether it's a comedy or not. I think it probably, even the bits that we're not finding as funny because they're gross, without this, the modern day context probably would have been, you know, much easier for people at the time to laugh at, because you know, what power did women have other than threatening to kill themselves to stop something, really? So yeah.
Other thoughts? We're about to go into final thoughts around the room. Rachael, before we do that.
No, I was going to talk about how she threatens to kill herself too. I wonder if, you know, there's so many times that if she wouldn't turn the knife on him if he wasn't the king, because that seems like a lot of the logical part of her seems to come out to combat him, because she has to. She can't confront him in the way that she otherwise would, because if she kills the king, then it's going to go back on to her husband in Salisbury. Yeah.
And why is it about Edward's and having really weird relationships with people? I mean, Edward I had a really, well, at least in the final scene of Edward I, you realise that his relationship with his queen is considerably different to what he thought. Edward IV, yeah, really bad things happen there. Edward II, actually, no, it doesn't go quite well there either. So, yeah, Edward's. What is it about Edward's? That's the first two acts of this text. Final thoughts around the room as far as you can thus far. If you don't have an opinion, feel free to skip forward, and also don't feel the need to reiterate anything that's already been well exercised in the room. Helen, do you have any final thoughts?
Oh, I should have, shouldn't I? But I don't think there's anything that hasn't already been said.
Okay, well, we can come back to you if something pops in. Sarah, do you have any final thoughts?
This play did not go the way I thought it would. Or at least it hasn't so far. Like, I was expecting battly, and instead I got kind of slightly nefarious, toxic love comedy, which is kind of a par for the course with love comedies from this period, but it was a surprise. That's all.
Yeah, you could hear the drum but it was like the drum was so meta. It was like just going, there's a history play, it's off stage, it's coming on in a minute. Yeah. There was something really weird about that. Alan, any final thoughts?
I must admit, I think these two acts would work quite well as a standalone play on their own. You know, you've got a plot which develops and is resolved. Okay, you've got the noises going on off stage, but fair enough. We've had that elsewhere. But it would be an interesting piece just to do these two acts as a piece. And I think it will be an interesting place to put the interval at this stage, because the audience will go out thinking, well, hold on a minute, we've had a complete plot line effectively. You know, what the hell are they going to do in the second half?
Eric, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting play. It's like yes, we're going to war, but now we're not, because I guess this is a different type of war, like the sort of political war, like internal war kind of. Yeah, I don't really have anything else to add.
No, that's fine. Elizabeth, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I really love the political intrigue in this play. I echo Sarah's sentiments that it didn't do what I expected it to. And I think that we've done quite a lot of Turkish plays, and we had all, the Janissaries and the murders thing. And I think that this history play has been like a timeline cleanse. It has kind of come along and it's kind of swept up the cobwebs. I really love the Countess. It's such a shame that she's gone now, that she's done her part. I love the whole idea of the siege and the political intrigue that kind of keeps on churning between the Scots, the English, the French. I love all of that. I love the way we have all these emissaries that coming from abroad with the new information and that kind of change the status quo in the plot. I'm enjoying it quite a lot, and it is definitely not doing the things I thought it would.
Rachael, any final thoughts?
No, I mean, everybody's said it already, and I've already said a lot. I do like where this is. I do like what we've read today. And I do like the Countess. I think she's that, and not even though I don't like Edward, I think all the parts in this so far are fantastic parts for actors to jump into, because there is all this stuff that we've talked about to play with and enjoy.
Stephen, any final thoughts?
I suppose, yeah. I mean, thinking about what people would have expected from Edward III, it's sort of macho man, isn't it? So this is a kind of way of playing with those expectations. And I'm not sure, my memory is playing tricks on me, but history plays, if they're going to have something to distract you from the business of war and so forth, it's very often a kind of comic commoner's plot, isn't it? And this is an interestingly experimental take on that, I suppose. I like the point about the drums, because at one point he literally does say, no, replace the drums with lutes, doesn't he? So there's a kind of sort of big generic signaling thing going on there, because lutes are indoor instruments, basically. Drums and trumpets are outdoor instruments. History plays, war make a lot of noise, and stringed instruments are indoor instruments, effectively. It reminds me a bit of this sort of old idea that early modern masculinity sees excessive involvement of any kind with women as in itself effeminating. That a true man would have very little to do with women, and he kind of does that. He sort of turns into Philip Marlowe or Sam Spade or something, doesn't he? He leaves the dame behind and get on with his quest, which is go and sort of stick one on the French for insulting his honor right at the beginning. So he's kind of completely dropped back into this sort of heroic macho quest thing. So I suppose I'm really interested to see if they're going to find some way to vary it in the second half, or is it all going to be kind of a plot?
Or the second 2/3. Tamara, any final thoughts?
I mean, yeah, but like a bunch of us, I came here for a war, and I'm feeling so attacked right now. No, I was expecting more war and battle stuff, but everything that we've read so far is, I can picture it on stage. There is especially the bit with Lodowick and the love letter. I can just sort of see the what. So I think there's so much to get out of all of the scenes that we've read so far for actors, and I'm really excited about that. I just want to see where it goes now that apparently this business is done and we are going to war.
War, what is it good for? Another 2/3 of the play. Briony, final thoughts?
It's mostly really been said. I'm still reeling that the Countess is gone. I'm glad we got to meet her though. What a brilliant character. And yeah, there's many brilliant characters, lots of great things to be said, and most of it's already been said. So I'll.
Cool. Emma, final thoughts, please.
Yeah, I think it's a really solid play so far. It's a page turner. Things keep happening all the time, new things, twists and turns. I think the verse is, well, what I was reading is clever, smooth, easy to read, and really gives you a sense of the character's internal rhythm as you read it. I could feel the knife edge that the Countess was on as I was reading it. It was brilliant.
And Lynn, final thoughts?
Yeah, for those of you who are not familiar with the genre of American hard-boiled detective fiction that Stephen touched on, that I just know that analogy was extremely apt. So, just sort of a brilliant intertextual connection there. And I also agree with Alan that this movement of the play feels like a standalone story. It feels like a complete narrative on its own. And it's so good structurally in terms of the characters, the verse. There's so much here to enjoy and admire and for actors to get their teeth into. It sets a really high bar for the rest of the play, doesn't it?
Well, I actually feel weirdly the complete opposite. I find this very, very derailing for the play. I think it's creating a direction where it's very difficult for us to root for the central character, and as a divertisement, it's a blind alley. So actually, this after the first scene, I have to say, I just feel that it's a no from me, which is unusual. You don't often get that. Eric.
Yeah, but surely if he was likable from the beginning, there would be no journey, would there? There would be no.
You're saying he learns.
I'm assuming. I don't know. I'm hoping.
Well, let's see whether we get that journey. Let's see whether we get more from Daddy Edward, and of course, high hopes for what comes with little Prince Edward as well. So that's our first session. We have two more looking at this play. As we go forward, all that remains is to thank all these wonderful readers for all their thoughts. Thank you very much, everyone, and goodbye.
Bye.